The Nigerian gubernatorial and state houses of assembly elections, which had nearly 90 million registered voters, were marked by a disappointing turnout, according to observers. In fact, it is believed that the turnout may have been even lower than the previous elections in February, which saw just 26.7% of voters participating, the lowest in the country's history. Reports from observer groups suggest that the elections were plagued by violence, with ballot papers being stolen, voting disrupted, and some voters prevented from casting their ballot for their preferred candidates. This led to voting being postponed in some locations until Sunday, the next day, that is. Despite facing a significant challenge from the opposition, many incumbent governors were re-elected, putting their hold on power to test. The ballot papers featured 11 incumbents, many of whom were taken aback by the shakeup that occurred during the presidential and National Assembly elections. They made last-minute efforts to woo voters, but the results of the elections show that there is still much work to be done to improve the democratic process in Nigeria. My name is Kemini Amano, and you're welcome to The Square. Joining our gathering today are Olusesan Okunade. He's a political analyst. He's based here in Lagos. We also have Evans Ufeli. He is a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst, also based here in Lagos. Gentlemen, you're welcome to The Square. Indeed.
Good afternoon. No, good afternoon, Kemini.
Absolutely. Now, before I take your comments on what you have observed so far with this stage of the elections, let's go to Rivers State, one of the highly contested areas, and speak to our correspondent, find out what's happening there. Amadine, thank you so much for following up on Rivers for us. But we know that at some point there was a pause on collation. Tell us what's happening now. But I don't think that we can get audio. Although we see Amadine, we cannot hear him. So would reconnect a little later in the conversation, which brings me to my guests, Olusesan and Evans. I'll start with you, Olusesan. Talk to me about your observations and your thoughts about how far the process has come so far.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate you for the opportunity to be on air this afternoon. Yeah, going by the analysis of the election held on Saturday, the 18th day of March, in comparison with what we had on the 25th, we observed a few things. One, as regard INEC, some of the potholes that we analysts shared out on the area of improvement was worked on. One, logistics and early arrival at the polling booths. These we, from the sampled, random sampling that we had, and the report from most correspondents, I can say that there was drastic change from what we faced on the 25th of February for the presidential. And also, there seems to be an improvement in the area of the understanding of the POs with the beavers and the IREP. At least at this point in time, we did not face so much challenges. People seem to have understudied it, and they've gone for more training. So the flow and response time of attending to the electorate this time around, the gubernatorial election, was much more faster. And you observed, I'm sure your reporters across the state will provide that there are some states with early collation of result as early as 3, because majority seems to finish earlier, around 12-1, because of the voter apathy that we experienced. Just like you said in your prologue, we discovered that the turnout at this time around in some areas were lower, and because of the suppression and harassment, the threats by certain quarters, some certain people decided to stay at home. But by and large, I feel we can give kudos to INEC in the area of improvement in the use of beavers, in the sense that some of us monitor some things. Those things that we used to have it before, when you talk of impersonation, that is really not happening. And I think that's why certain quarters, people resulted into snatching of ballot boxes, forgetting that the details of those that were captured can be made available. That's just what is being faced in Kaduna as we speak,
Indeed.
where they had their delay. So I want to believe that, well, they tried their best. The only area that I know is outside the scope of INEC, which is within the security agency, is the attacks and threats that are being
Absolutely.
issued that reduced the problem of people coming out to cast their vote. These are the future, but I know we are improving. At least there is a complete improvement from what we experienced
Yeah,
during the use of card
and
reader
we'll
in
look a bit more.
2019.
Indeed, we'll look a bit more at those challenges. But let me pick Evans's initial thoughts on the process so far outside of INEC performance, which Olusesan has detailed. What else do you think about this election that mimicked or perhaps got better if compared to the presidential race about a month ago? Evans, I think you're muted. We can't hear you. Well, we still can't hear you, Evans. You'd have to work on your audio and reconnect with us so that
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Evans. I was asking, in comparison, where do you think that the elections mirrored what happened in the presidential race, and where do you think there was improvement?
Well, I don't think this governorship and the House of Assembly election was actually better than the previous. It wasn't, because if you look at it, you will notice that the discrepancies and the breakdown of law and order that we witnessed in this governorship and House of Assembly election was much more than what we had there. When you say the election was plagued by violence, the violence is better explained in this governorship election than the previous. There was total voter suppression, especially in Lagos, where there was an unwitting injection of ethnic and tribal bigotry, which spiraled into a lot of crises. And the fact that the security men, the policemen who were on duty to enforce and protect law and order, were completely disenchanted and uninterested about their primary function to protect life and properties during the process. So what we had in the last this election is quite very damning. If you want to compare it, I mean, the first one, INEC were not very compliant with their own directives, which we all complained that why didn't they transmit the result from the polling unit. That heavily complained about that. They seem to have corrected it in the second election, that's the governorship election, but the breakdown of law and order took over the second one. Of course, there are places where it went on peacefully and all that, but there are places in Lagos where it was largely popularized
and I'd want us to
violence and all that.
And I'd want us to look at some of those areas a little later in our conversation. But one of the things in terms of reflections that I want us to look at is the party performances in the presidential elections that people assumed or people looked forward to seeing in the governorship race. And I want us to start with one that was least contested, the very first day to be officially announced. Let's start with Oyo State, where Governor Seyi Makinde was re-elected to another term. I'll start with you, Olusesan. What do you think worked for Seyi Makinde?
Thank you very much. Like we said, this election has actually proven that people awareness are out there, and they know actually what they wanted. If you see what happened during the presidential election, we saw the other party clinching the three National Assembly state, the three senatorial, more of APC at the House of Rep, more than the incumbent, which is PDP, and the president actually won that state. And it was a call for concern for some of us as analysts, thinking that it's going to be a tight schedule for Sheyi. But the people of Oyo State actually know what they wanted, and that we've seen played out in several states. People coming out to say, well, we can do it like this at the presidential, and this is what we want at the gubernatorial level. And I think what worked for him, Sheyi is a grassroots person. He actually worked, and he has that emotional intelligence on his part, having the feeling of the people that is actually leading. So at the time that the presidential election was on, he was concentrating, doing what he knows how to do best, campaigning and moving around to make sure that his state is well tightened up. And like I spoke with him yesterday, he is a man who gives equity and fairness a focal thing in everything that he does.
Indeed.
And that we saw played out. So people actually know when you walk, it is not a media propaganda. It is about people saying it, confirming it, and they will be the one that will definitely do the campaign for you, not you running around to run the media or propaganda about your achievement.
I see. Evans, in your opinion, was it just Sheyi's good work, or perhaps what some people have said could be his seeming alliance, well, not alliance, but alignment rather, to the APC gave him quite a jolt in his state?
Yeah, well, apart from the fact that he works, we should also know that the Oyo politics is a very different brand of politics in our ecosystem. If you notice, in Oyo State, governors are not easily returned after their first term, because you look at the trajectory since 1999, you find out that in most occasions, I think he just said Makinde is the first person since 1999 who. Okay,
he's the second person to have a second term.
Second person.
Yes,
he's the second person.
He's the second person, because the previous governor also had, the late guy now also had a second term. But if you look at it, their kind of politics is driven by performance. Okay, not just that you are campaigning. Well, campaign helped him. Alliances also did that, which is normal in politics. But ultimately, you discover that his performance and his ability to connect with the people effectively played a major role, and also that he has also been a party man. Okay, his political party also, having not been found of any anti-party activity, having been a party man in the course of his stay in that party, also contributed to what has given him that edge to return as a governor. So it is one that is highly appreciated by the people. If you see that the entire citizens of that state, they're actually happy that he returned elected, and that is a good one for his political party.
I think the other leg of the Oyo conversation is, the conduct of the elections itself, and the fact that, nobody is contesting Sheyi Makinde, that, this was done with foul play or with some kind of contestation of the results. And again, I wonder why that is. Olusesan, have you made any readings into why the event was incident-free, and perhaps what could other states be learning from that?
Yeah, I think what other states should learn from is democracy is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. When you are able to have the common thing for the three, which is the people, then as a leader, your success is guaranteed. The people came all out. Sheyi did the campaign, but I'm not too far from Ibadan. It's where I go practically every 2 weeks. People actually campaign on his behalf. When you go to the nitty-gritty grassroots, they are much more than with the elite on social media. And there is nothing you can do to convince people that are seeing development, not the one that you are telling them you will do, or the one you are doing a 3D pictures of what it looks like. They can see it and they would make the determination within themselves that indeed, if this person can do this within 4 years, he deserves a return. So the common ground in the definition of democracy played air. That is the people. The people saw the work that he did. They worked for him. It is not the party that works now. People, you see, I can tell you for free, I'm very close to the elite in Ibadan, and they didn't want Seyi Makinde back. But the grassroots, those that he actually favored, worked in his favor, and those numbers are much more than the elite that feels that certain things are not done in their favor. So it's when you have grassroots politics, it pays on a long way when they can see the dividend of democracy as individual, and they will definitely work to protect whatever it is that has to do with you to guarantee you that success.
I see. Speaking of contestation of results, let's talk about Lagos. Lagos was a very interesting place to watch. We knew that from the beginning, but things really went haywire in the state. Before we get into the security of things, the results themselves, Evans, were you expecting this kind of results at the end of the day for Lagos?
No, I did not expect that. The margin of lead was too much. I mean, 40,000 or thereabouts. That was too much. The margin of lead, if you compare that with the kind of reception that the LP candidates have had as a build-up to this time, you will know that something really went wrong. The level of voter suppression played a role. The injection of ethnic bigotry and all that played a role. There's going to be, because holistically, if you look at it, there's a huge, substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act. But the Electoral Act have clearly, stated how these processes should run. And what we saw in Lagos was completely at variance with the Electoral Act. And that is why the LP or the adverse party, they are talking about contesting this at the court of law, which is one of the regular things to expect when a process has not been organized properly. In this case, INEC seemed to have though in some areas they did not come out early, but this was actually better in terms of punctuality and all that.
Right.
At the early stage of that day, we thought we were going to have a very free and fair process, a smooth process. But when the area boys took over the contest, that is when we discovered that the violence had been prepared somewhere, and the evil took a huge part of that day, and that led to the outcome of what we have. So that outcome would have been a true reflection of what would have been in the presence of peace and tranquility.
Very well. So, Olusesan, this Lagos race turned out to be one between the incumbent Babajide Sanwo-Olu and the LP candidates, Badebo Rhodes Viva. And again, like Evan said, people were expecting that the performance of the LP in the presidential elections will be translated here. Here's LP, on the other hand, saying that the election was stolen from us based on some of the reasons that Evans has already given. Would you say that the incumbent may be celebrating too early? Should this incumbent, is this a worthy victory that the incumbent should celebrate at all? Or what could the future look like for the contest in Lagos? Has it ended or there's more to come?
Okay, thank you very much. I need to just correct an impression. You see, when we had the presidential election across the nation, certain two key things played a key role, which some of us as analysts was actually against across the party: religion and ethnic. It played a prominent dominance that you saw certain part of religion saying the presidential candidate of a particular party, a Muslim ticket. We saw threats of pastors to make congregation whom they should stay neutral do come out. For me, I told people, and if you check up several fora that I do analyze, I said it was going to be a different ball game when it comes to the gubernatorial in Lagos. Aside the voter suppression by the overzealous touts and talks. Why do I say this? The contention then, one of the major instruments used during the presidential against the president-elect could not be used during the gubernatorial race in Lagos. And my eyes were actually on ground because I did some monitoring. Several churches that gave the initial instruction went to revert back. This I can tell you for free. Majority of them went back and they said, please, please vote for whosoever you want. We have done that which you want at the initial stage. So I was expecting there was going to be a slight changes, but with the voter suppression and the overzealousness of the talk and bigotry that happened, one cannot affirmatively say that the contest that was supposed to be free and fair was now peddling with thuggery. But my opinion was that the initial one, the Christians were really out to make sure that the Muslim ticket, and we have several churches in Lagos. My ears are actually on ground. So the two things that were used.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Lagos, in the case of the governorship race, did it end up being hinged on ethnicity, or it was on religious basis? Because it would seem that what brought about a lot of the thuggery, a lot of the concerns by people who had gone to the polls to vote and couldn't vote was because they were being tagged of a certain ethnic group and they didn't want them there to vote.
Of course, you're very right. And that's why I said the initial one that happened on the 26th was premised on religion and ethnic. But when the gubernatorial came out, the first, which is the religion, was played down. There was ethnic correlation in the presidential election too. I must tell you that for free. And some of the figures you saw was the backing they got from the religious angle that we saw at that level.
I see.
But when the religious aspect was actually pulled out, it was the ethnicity part that was not playing the role of the game.
And I want us to talk a bit more about Lagos when we come back. Stay with us here. Today on The Square, we are continuing our coverage of Nigeria's gubernatorial and state houses of assembly elections that took place last Sunday. Much of it continued into Sunday. It took place last Saturday. Much of it continued into Sunday. What we know now is many of the 28 states, announcement of results is still ongoing there. Some of them have taken pauses. But with me here, Olusesan Okunade, he's a political analyst based in Lagos. We also have Evan Sufedi, he's a legal practitioner and also a public affairs analyst based here in Lagos as well. And we'll continue our conversation quite quickly. And gentlemen, just let's wrap it up on Lagos so that we can look at Adamawa and the rest. Were you disappointed, Evans, of how things turned out in Lagos, particularly the bigotry that came along with the elections?
I was very disappointed because we are creating new layers of crisis on existing ones. Already we are going through a lot. We have a lot of insecurity in this country. And when people are allowed to now begin to probe into people's state of origin, suppress them not to vote because of the likelihood that they may vote the candidates who have been vilified in the state because he has been called inexperienced, and a lot of people have said he cannot speak the language, and then he has a mother that is from a different tribe and all that. They're concocting a very primitive way of aligning to democracy that was allowed to fester uncontrollably. The politicians sow that seed, and then the electors jumped at it. And here we are. We have used it now as a yardstick to plague the process to the point where some persons couldn't even come out at all for the fear of being killed or being injured. Now, that's a time bomb in itself. That is going to go somewhere apart from political engagement. Remember, this might translate into economic activities. People who will start, after the elections, who will start to carry over, who have hangover of violent expressions that may snowball into some other very difficult situation. I think we can avoid this. They've been voting in Lagos since when? Since 1923. Okay? I mean, up until the date. So, Lagos have that status that it is cosmopolitan. So let's allow the cosmopolitan nature of Lagos to strive. Okay?
Yeah.
By the time the masses are not sensitive enough to understand that even the candidates you are supporting here and there's no guarantee that they will perform. They have not even performed in the past. There's no guarantee that they're going to perform now, no matter the level of bigotry we inject into the system.
Well, I don't think that Babajide would agree with you on that. But let's move on away from Lagos.
Doesn't matter who agrees.
Let's move on away from Lagos right now. Olusesan, I know there's much more to talk about with Lagos, but let's jump right into Adamawa's race that has now been put on hold. Prior to that, the APC candidate, Shaitu Binani, appeared to be in the lead. What's your take on how things are going in Adamawa?
Kemine, if I may say this, the electorate needs to just let's be careful the way the politicians make use of us against one another. Not for now. Think about the future. What is playing out in Adamawa is not different from what we have faced in other states. Power of incumbency, and from information we are gathering, the governor seems to be having backing of a big width from that state, who is a presidential aspirant for a party. And, it will be a big slap if that should cross across. But for some of us who have our ears on the ground, that woman did her homework right from being a chairman of local government to when she rose to the level of being a senator. So she's a grassroots politician, and that's why we are seeing the dividend of people coming out to say they will have it. And I think this election has passed a message for those that care to listen, that whatever it is, continue your path. We are watching. It's a matter of 4 years. We cannot have a wasted years, I can always tell you, because when some people come on board, they will fast track and gain those 4 years. But your name definitely would definitely be the one to be smeared with several things. It's not only in Adamawa. Look at the closeness that we had in Ogun State. Look at what the keenly contest election in Kaduna State. Lot of surprises, and that's why some of us we are giving kudos to INEC, at least getting the accreditation. See, Kemini, there was a period in this country that you will see registered voters of 2 million in a particular state, and you will hear about 1.8 million come out to vote. But all of a sudden, you will see 2 million, and the maximum we are getting is just 400. Even if you are going to talk about a voter party or suppression, it shouldn't be that drastic. But it's to tell us that we seem to be getting some records straight. Politicians know how they have their way. I can give you this practical example of somebody trying to impersonate.
So what I want to understand is let's look at the reason for why the collation was put on hold. The reason was that there were a number of cancellations in one of the states, that they had to recompile the votes in Fofore. Was that enough reason? Because if you have a chunk of the number of LGAs in that area, couldn't they have still gone ahead? Essentially, what I'm asking is, how important was Fofore that it had to,
I understand, and I know Evans
put the election
put this in
on
the
road.
right. No, I know Evans will put this in the right perspective as a legal person.
Yeah, and that's for Evans. I'll come back to you, Olusesan. That's for Evans. Okay. Evans, I mean, was Fofore really significant to the race that they had to put, the entire collation on hold for Fofore?
Yes, you cannot announce results. You cannot make a final announcement of results except and until they have collated the result of all the local governments and all the polling units put together. Okay? So if there's a polling unit or somewhere where there's crisis and there's a need to hold on and then continue, and that is done in good faith, the result will not be announced until that particular area has been corrected and election concluded in that area. So that you cannot announce, you can announce results in polling unit, but when you're talking about the final collation for the announcement of the winner, okay, the winner must be announced after the entire election has been concluded.
I see.
So if they have not concluded election in some parts, they cannot announce the final result. But that will mean that you are cutting off some parts of the states.
I mean, whether or not it will make any change in the results, there is no perhaps a requirement.
It does not matter. The Electoral Act says that you have to conduct election in all the polling units, collect the result from all the polling units. Those are the words of the Electoral Act.
I see.
If you have not done that, you cannot. Okay, if it is during election petition that we talk about substantial non-compliance and how substantial non-compliance affects the outcome. You see, if a particular candidate wins and the other candidate is saying, no, in this polling unit, this and this and this happened, therefore, he did not win. The court will look at it that even though this and this and this happened in this solar polling unit, could it have affected the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
If it's so insignificant that it couldn't have affected the outcome, the person who won will be declared winner. But if it's so huge that it affects the outcome of the result, then the court will take its decision whether to do a rerun or to declare the other person the winner of the election.
Very well, we'll wait on for it, Ben. But Olusesan, I know you wanted to say something about that. While you do that, I want us to look at two other states, events that happened in Enugu, and then also would look at Rivers State. But let me take your thoughts briefly on Adamawa and whether or not Fofore is significant to what happens at the end of the day.
I concur with what Evans has said. Just to put this addition that, also in the electoral, he stated that if the submission of the voided votes, it's much more than the margin between the first two contenders, you might declare that thing inconclusive. And these are areas that the politicians are looking at to see how they can close so that we can have a winner. But we all wait to see the outcome of it, hopefully before the close of day today.
Let's look at Rivers, Evans. What's your take on events in Rivers? We know that they have started the announcement of some of the results at the State Collation Center, but they put it on hold. They said they were going to be back at 2 p.m. Not that we know they are back right now. But your take on events in Rivers right now?
On events in Rivers, what actually happened in Rivers, though a little bit better than what happened in Lagos, there was a lot of issues of discrepancies and non-compliance with the Electoral Act. Voter suppression with the violence happened in a pocket of areas. Typically like an average election in Nigeria, where you had vote by excessively. And in some places, in some of the riverine areas, we saw videos of where the beavers boxes were found in some areas without the beavers inside. And we saw areas where people were casting their ballot without being accredited with the beavers. Now, the Electoral Act is very clear on what will happen in the circumstance. No, the Rivers State is notorious for election malpractice. This is the truth. It's not an indictment. It's just the truth. So when it's rebars, it has to do with the person who is able to outbreak the other person. And that is what is being concocted. And I'm sorry for the masses there. We allow ourselves to be used by politicians to perpetrate evil. And it's happening very well in Rivers State as we speak. We, the masses, are supposed to be the one to curtail and control the politicians when they begin to sow the seed of evil during political engagement.
Indeed.
But you find out that we are the ones that entrench it. Ballot boxes were snatched at some point, and violence erupted. So it is just the normal. A lot of malpractice has gone down in Rivers State.
Very well. Before we look at Enugu, I want us to look at Kano and Sokoto, where in Kano, the APC is out ushering in an NNPP governor, and in Sokoto, PDP is out ushering in an APC governor. Olusesan, does this surprise you, particularly knowing that you had earlier said that what happens in the presidential election may not necessarily happen in the governorship race, but in Kano, it seems to be proving you wrong.
Well, it's not proving us wrong. We know Kwakwanso as a very strong person in Kano, not just strong, a grassroots person. You see, when you are a politician, there is one thing for you to do analytic politics and grassroots person. You see, Kwakwanso is one. He did that during the presidential, and he's repeating the same during this gubernatorial. So for me, I'm not surprised. There are always exceptions to the rules. And when you go to Sokoto, you see, one thing we appreciate about this 2023 election is that the people are actually speaking. We can hear their voice, and they can actually dictate the tone of things. And with the cooperation that we got from INEC in aspect of making sure that the accreditation is what it's supposed to be, not expanding it, it has actually given room. I think part of the things we've been saying before now is that when the main voters happen, behind the scene, there will be additional, and that is being checkmate with the beavers. You can't bring in any additional vote, even if it is one. That particular polling unit will be null and void. The actual number of accredited voters must be equal to the election, to the ballot papers that you will deliver. So, a lot of surprises. Indeed. I think if we improve in the area of this accreditation, where they know that the actual number of people accredited is what we are expecting, there won't be any additional one that is being one godfather will bring from his house to add to what we have on ground.
Very well. And so Evans, you have the last word today, and let's talk about Enugu, another race that occurred in Enugu because it couldn't happen on February 25, the senatorial race. We know that Senator Inani is not lost to the LP candidates, following which he's quit the PDP. Your take on this, move? Were you expecting such an outturn of events, particularly he quitting his party?
Yes, of course. The LP have made a very huge stride. Remember, it is from that region in the country, and with his influence and impact, the LP seems to have made a huge surge and have been able to make a difference in that state. And this has led to a lot of realignments. I mean, the PDP, the APC in the state seems to be struggling with just the emergence of the LP. And that is expected because the two political parties I mentioned, APC and PDP, have not delivered dividend of democracy in most of the states where they
very well.
So it's a fresh bread for most of the electors to see that.
I apologize, I'm rushing you. This is a conversation we should continue same time here on the square tomorrow. I think there is a lot more to talk about, and you agree with me. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your company here today. Let's talk again tomorrow. How about that?
Thank you.